Welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast, where we discuss business solutions to help listeners develop and implement action plans for true lean process improvement. I am your host, Patrick Adams. Hello and welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast. My guest today is Stephanie Bown. Stephanie is the acclaimed author of Purpose, Passion, and Performance: How Systems for Leadership, Culture, and Strategy Drive the 3 Ps of High-Performing Organizations. The book was awarded one of Australia's top 3 leadership books in 2021. As an accredited facilitator for Young Presidents Organization and the company director, Stephanie deeply understands the challenges today's leaders face. She works with directors, founders, and executive teams to deliver talks and programs that embed high-performance habits and drive transformational change. Well, welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you, Patrick. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you. You are not necessarily in the U.S., which a large percentage of our listeners are in the U.S., but you are outside of the U.S. Can you just tell us where you're calling in from today?
Correct. I'm outside the bubble. I'm completely outside of the bubble. So I am based in Australia. I'm on the eastern seaboard. I'm on the most easterly point of Australia, if you can imagine a map of Australia. So it's a place called Byron Bay. We're known for our surf culture here. And so my closest capital city is Brisbane, which is about 2 hours north of me. But I get to live wherever I like, given the work that I do as a bit of a traveling nomad, traveling consultant and advisor. So I chose to live here. I chose to live by the bay.
Love it. Well, I think that's one of the things that makes our job so amazing is the ability to travel around. I absolutely love to travel as well. So I'm trying to get out and about and see the world, and it's always fun. The other thing that I really enjoy is work, all the different teams, the people that you work with and see, and just the different cultures that you get to, be involved with. So it's always fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's actually a perk, even though it can be a little bit challenging leaving the family all the time. But like you, I travel and I have a number of clients internationally now. So I do get to the US occasionally, and I get all the way over to Europe sometimes. And just try and approach it as an adventure every time. Yeah.
Love it. Well, I'm excited to dive into to your book and the topic of high performing teams. This is a great topic. I think one that, many of our listeners are going to be crazy excited about, and having an expert like you, to be able to just talk about, the principles that are laid out in your book, but that you live by. I mean, you've really devoted your life to discovering the dynamics of individuals, teams, and organizations. And I think that's, becomes very prevalent in your book and in the work that you do. But our listeners don't necessarily know you. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and, maybe how you got into this line of work?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I've always been really fascinated by psychology and human behavior. I'm the youngest of 4 children by a very long way. I was a mistake. But a happy one, my mum keeps telling me. But the advantage of growing up in a family where everybody was a lot older than me meant that I was observing human interaction and human dynamics from a very young age. And so at the age of 15, I was really clear that I wanted to get into psychology. And I had a conversation with my uncle at the time, who was also a psychologist. And he did a whole bunch of psych testing on me to help me choose a career. And he sort of was able to confirm that psychology would be a great career for me, which was a big relief at the time because it was what I wanted to do. And then I answered this really fundamental question, which was, well, the only decision you need to make now is whether you want to help people who are unwell get well, or if you want to help people who are already well perform at their best. And I instantly knew the answer to that. I knew I wanted to work with people and help them thrive. So that led me into the psychology of organizational performance. So I went into the neuropsychology of performance and also how people perform at work. And that took me down a path of management consulting initially. So it was really great to work, really cut my teeth as a young consultant in the world of leadership development and organizational change, and start to apply the principles that I've learned at uni and see how they really translated. But I think where it all really came together for me was a couple of years after I'd finished a master's in organizational dynamics, which is really about the interactions of psychosocial systems. So it's systems thinking about how people interact with the work and each other and how that dynamic creates a culture. And so that extra layer of systems thinking to organizations really helped me understand the complexities and how, if we're looking at organizational change, really what we need to be looking at is the level of systems that we create in organizations, which moves a bit beyond the idea of a structure or just a leadership skill. We're sort of moving into the kind of interplay of how these things come together. And so I was really fortunate to have an opportunity to go in-house with an organization that was in a turnaround phase, and they were a health and wellness company that produced multivitamins and over-the-counter probiotics and things like that. They were called Swiss Wellness. So they were going through a turnaround. So I was lucky to sort of go in-house and really apply what I'd learned with an executive team and be their partner and start to apply some of these principles that ended up landing in my book around really sort of getting clarity on purpose and mission, and empowering leaders to coordinate teams to work together better, and then really living a set of values and beliefs. And when we saw this extraordinary turnaround that happened over the course of a year or two within this organization, they went from almost going into administration to delivering an incredible revenue and 40% margin. And they ended up going through one of the record private sale for Australia at the time. They sold to a Hong Kong listed company. But to see that turnaround happen so fast through some of these practices and principles that we've put in place really, for me, solidified the fact that this stuff really works. And so that gave me the confidence to start my own practice and move to the place where I really wanted to raise my children and do this work. So that's kind of a snapshot of the journey. But I've always had this passion for people and performance in workplaces. Yeah.
Wow. Everything you just laid out put me in a place where I have like 50 questions for you. So
excellent.
That's okay. Yes. Well, first of all, I'm crazy excited for you that you knew your passions and your purpose at a young age, and you had some confirmation for that and followed through on it. I mean, congratulations on that. That's amazing. So many people, I think, find themselves working in jobs or doing things that they're not necessarily passionate about or excited about, and that creates some struggles and challenges for people, right? So I think we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go today. But the question that I had, you brought in this example of this transformation that you were involved with at this company, and one of the questions that came to mind is you said it happened fairly quickly, and it had a lot to do with the work that was done at the executive level, dealing with people's behaviors and actions. What would you say if you could call out one or two really important aspects of that transformation? What would those be? If someone was sitting in the same place and they were like, we want to kick off this transformation, what advice would you give them? What were the top 2 or 3 items that you guys worked on?
Yeah, it's a great question, Patrick. And look, I look at you and you're wearing a shirt which is all about lean solutions and agile ways of working. And there's so much alignment between what you do and the principles and practices that I helped this team put in place. I think that the initial part of this was getting the senior team, which included the executive team of 5 individuals plus their direct reports, so maybe a group of about 20, in a room together to look at the actual state of play as it was at the time, and really kind of appreciate where they were at in terms of their strengths and their capabilities. So just kind of look at it with humility and go, okay, the stuff we're doing well, the stuff we're really stuffing up, and have the humility to admit mistakes. And be willing to change some things. So getting our people in a room and to look at it objectively at what they were doing was the first part of this. But the other part, which is this kind of lean and agile idea, which was, let's just get a 1-page plan happening, like just a plan on a page, right? Nothing more complicated than that. There were plans and strategies all through the organization. There were like PowerPoint decks that were 20 pages long. There was one for the ops team. There was one for the IT team. There was one for marketing. And there was just too many different objectives sending all these people in 20,000 different directions. So what we needed to do is get everybody aligned and on the same page, literally one page. And so that whole process of simplifying our objectives, really coming back to the purpose, what are we about, what makes us successful, what do our customers love, and let's get super sharp on we absolutely have to nail. And we talked about, specific categories that we needed to win in. We talked about margin targets we must hit. And we talked about culture and process improvements we needed to make that were absolute, we had to do them. There was no buts about it. So, but what that meant was everybody had these kind of 4 pillars and everybody set goals and objectives according to these 4 pillars. And everybody came together on the same page to actually deliver that result. So just aligning a team on a single, simple set of goals and objectives is one massive part of that. Mm-hmm. The other big part of that was this leadership team being very transparent and open to feedback. So we created a really strong feedback culture where feedback was normalized, where they gave each other really straight to the point, constructive, both positive and negative feedback with each other. So they learned how to adjust their behavioral styles in the way that they were leveraging their talent as a leadership team. And then they started to bring that culture to their own team. So it's not that no one was safe, but if we were going to create a high performance environment, we needed to be really honest and transparent about what was working and what was not working, where there were passengers on the bus, where there were leaders on the bus. And we needed to empower the people who were on the bus and genuinely doing the work to make key decisions and to offload the passengers, the people who weren't really engaged, who weren't really part of the story, who needed to move on to a different place because their hearts and minds had already left the building. So we sort of had a lot of really honest, difficult conversations, but conversations that took us to this place very quickly. Once we got super sharp on why we were there, what we were working on and who needed to be there to do it, and then how we were going to work together, all of it turned around, all of it turned around. So it can be a bit uncomfortable, but the upside of a performance culture is so worth it because people want to be part of a success story. Nobody wants to be part of a failure, and failure is great if we can learn from failure. I'm all about failing fast, Amy Edmondson and psychological safety, create it. But we need to learn from our mistakes. We need to actually grow from our mistakes rather than let them become excuses for underperformance.
Absolutely.
So that was the kind of the keys really. And that idea of coming back together every quarter, like clockwork, like that agile idea, just kind of test, give it a go, come back, see how it works. If it doesn't work, axe it, come up with something new. We don't have to just keep following through on stuff that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of fail fast, idea started to really take root in the way that people were launching products and talking to retailers, which meant we could adapt really quickly to markets that were really taking up our products. So where we got lucky was that a couple of our products became popular to the Chinese market. So they kind of really cottoned on to the lean, green, healthy aspects of our brand, and they started to buy and sell our brand into China through kind of online resellers. So we just fed that channel, really quickly, and it just blew the brand up super fast. So, but if we weren't cottoned into those, why is that particular area buying up big in these particular products? And then we kind of went into those stores and figured out, it's these, these Chinese resellers who are coming in. So let's feed that channel. And that's how it happened. But if we weren't being receptive to the market opportunity, then we wouldn't have picked that up, and that whole wouldn't have happened. So it was a really great lesson in how you create the right culture, the right processes, the right people, and then they will find the opportunities and capitalize on them when they present themselves. Yeah. Sure.
And it sounds like with the China market picking up, if they wouldn't have done the work ahead of time and would have still been in this complete chaotic mode or this place of, complete instability. I mean, who knows what would have happened, right? So the fact that they did the work ahead of time to create some stability and simplify things, which I love the simplicity of what you just walked us through. Obviously that set them up for some great success and growth, it sounds like, going forward.
Absolutely. You've got to create the environment where things can thrive. That's what you can control as a leader and as a business owner. You can't force people to perform, but you can create the conditions in which that's possible. And then that's where trust comes in, right? That's when you need to trust that the people that you have are going to come with you on that journey. And if you start to do that, it's like gardening, like you create the beautiful soil, plant things in the right places, and then watch it grow. And if it's not, then you've put the wrong tree in the wrong spot, uproot it, move it somewhere else.
Right.
So if you see yourself as a gardener, then it changes a little bit of the mindset about how you want to create a business.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, again, I appreciate the simplicity of what you laid out. Obviously you're dealing with people, and, people tend to bring the complexity, or things tend to start to unravel. And so I'm curious, in this transformation, you said you had leaders in these different departments or areas, almost siloed. They had their own plans for what they were planning for their area, their department, and you had to get everybody aligned. There had to be some serious challenges that came with that, with trying to get everybody aligned on the same page. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, what were the challenges that came with that?
Yeah, look, it's every organization falls prey to this at some stage, this siloing that happens, where we rely on a central individual, a CEO or a general manager or a president, somebody who is there to disseminate and direct the activities of everybody else. The issue with that is that everybody hears one message, but they perceive it slightly differently. So they'll all go off in their own tangents, and it's a bit of a Chinese whisper that starts to happen unintentionally. But people will pick up and take what they think their boss is asking them to do, and they'll execute that without checking in across their peer network to go, okay, how does this line up with your outcome? So what then happens is this siloing happens, and it's not, things fail in the end, or they don't perform as they should. And rather than take accountability, people start pointing fingers of blame and going, oh, not me, we did our bit. It was them that didn't do their bit. We did a great job in marketing. It was the operations team that didn't get the supply chain happening quick enough. And so when we've got that culture, it's very unhelpful. What we really need is a team of people who, when they come together as a group, they are a leadership team. Their job as leaders is to create collaboration and cross-fertilization of accountability. So unless we bring them together in these rooms and go, how are you going as your team, as a leadership team, not an operations, not a marketing, you're a layer team. So if they start to recognize, oh, hang on, my team, I've got a couple of teams. I step in marketing, but I also am in leadership. So I need to work well both at this leadership level and in my own department. And if I can do both, if I'm put in both camps, then I can collaborate better and we can get better outcomes organizationally. And I think the other thing too is when we're coming back together, we're celebrating the achievements of the organization, of the group. And it's through those celebrations that we start to say, oh, if we collaborate, we all win. It's a win-win mentality, rather than bonusing individual teams for their own individual performance. So we put in very clear reward systems around, there were stage gates, like the business had to perform before any individual incentives were activated. And if the business didn't perform its revenue and margin target, nobody got anything, right? So that forced, didn't force, but it certainly encouraged people to work together first. That was the first thing. Secondly, then do your best in your role as much as you can. So that, it can, if we don't do these things, we get unintentional silos. We get people kind of creating fiefdoms in their own teams. We get a blame culture. We get low accountability. And that all then falls on the head of the CEO. It's a lot to carry. It's a big burden. And the general managers and the presidents, those running organizations or running large departments, they often feel the pressure to be the person in the middle and do all the directing, when really if they can just share that a bit more, share the responsibility, have the plan as a group, help the team take collaborative accountability for an outcome, then we get a better solution. But we keep getting caught up in outdated hierarchical ideas about what leadership is about. And to our detriment, we need collaboration more than ever. We've got problems to solve that are beyond where we've ever been. We've got more and more complex environments we're working in, and we really need to harness the collective wisdom of teams more than ever in order to solve the problems that we have. COVID was unprecedented. Global financial crisis is unprecedented. We're in, a situation where we have some, terrible political, outcomes with the war in Ukraine and what's happening in the Gaza Strip. So all of these things create destabilization in the environments, the markets that we're operating in, and we can't predict that. It's not like it used to be. It's unpredictable. So we absolutely need to lean into collective wisdom, and that's what helps us come up with better solutions in the end and allows us to learn faster as well.
Yeah, makes sense. And this particular example is just one of many that you've been involved in since that time. But in that particular transformation and in those that came after, part of what you wrote about in your book is that there's a certain amount of passion that it takes for to create a high-performing work team. So in this example and other examples, when we use the word passion, I think sometimes, people maybe define that differently or understand it differently. And before we even hit record, you and I were talking about your passion for the work that you do and how that was ignited, and then, now how you use that in the work that you do now. But how do we define passion for leaders, or what does it mean for a leader to be passionate about the work they do or the people they work with or whatever it may be? Can you just help us kind of level set on what does passion mean for us?
Yeah, so look, the book, I obviously love the word because it's one of the key words as a title to my book on purpose, passion, and performance. I think you need all three things in organizations for them to be high performing. Passion is a really key ingredient to all of this. The way that I define it and talk about it as part of important organizationally is that passion is, it comes from our shared system of values and beliefs. So passion is what's important to you, what you believe to be important in life. And obviously we gain these things through our childhoods and as we grow into adulthood through many experiences. But what really kind of creates passion in organizations is when we find this shared system of values and beliefs. So people will enter healthcare, for example, because they have a passion for human health, because they care about people's well-being, because they want to see change in the system. They want to be able to improve the way healthcare is delivered. And, there's a whole number of underlying values that drive that. And so when we're joining an organization, what we're actually joining is a culture, which is a system of shared values and beliefs. And that is what's implicit. That's what lies underneath the surface. And so if you think about your values set as one circle and the organization that you're joining is another value set, is another circle, and that creates a Venn, right? So how much overlap is there? How close is your Venn diagram on your value set and the organizational value set? And ideally, there's a large degree of overlap, right? You're part of something that you genuinely, deeply care about. And so that helps you stay connected, because what that does is it makes the work really meaningful. It makes our jobs really meaningful, but it also helps us overcome the difficulty, because of course work is, how much disappointment can you tolerate every day? That's the level that you go to with your jobs and with your work. So, it's hard. It can be challenging to turn up, to keep creating change, to continuously improve, to always look for the next millimeter or centimeter of improvement. And so it requires energy. It requires passion to do that. We've got to care enough to keep pushing. And so it's super, super important that you join an organization where you feel that there is an overlap between your value set and the organization's value set, and that you can withstand it. That allows you to withstand the pressure and the requirement of actually needing to grow and change and improve all the time. And I think where they don't feel the passion, they just don't share the same set of values. They just don't. It influences everything. It influences the choice of organizations we're going to join, the brands we choose to buy from, the suppliers we choose to work with. It influences how we engage with that customer set, what kinds of customers we actually want to work with as well, and have it on board as part of our organizations. So it's absolutely critical, passion, but it really just comes down to beliefs and values that sit underneath and really sort of drive the behaviors that we see. Those are the things that drive that outcome.
Sure. And do you think it's possible for leaders that maybe have joined organizations where, maybe they didn't share the same values or passions at the beginning? Is it possible for them to adopt those at a later point, or for leaders to coach and help develop other leaders to, gain or ignite a passion and align with the values? I mean, or is it like, no, if you're not aligned, you need to find a different place? Or what does that look like in your mind?
Yeah, I definitely think we can discover passion and we can discover energy. I think passion comes from at an individual level. It comes both from having alignment with values of the organization, but also, do you actually get to use your strengths at work? So do you get to do what you love doing at work every day? And so sometimes when I'm working with individuals, perhaps they just haven't really they haven't had the curiosity about that yet. It's like, well, why am I here? Why did I choose this place beyond just the pay and the conditions and the fact that I kind of like the job description? Like, why am I really here?
Right.
If we can explore that and go, okay, well, what's really important to you about the work that you do? What gives you a sense of meaning? Also, what do you really love doing? And we do then need to sort of perform a little bit of like analysis of how much of your role allows you to do what you love and gives you a sense of meaning, right? So those two things are really important to explore. Sometimes we get down the end of that road and people go, actually, I realized I'm in the wrong place. And that's the case. It does happen. It absolutely happens. And that's actually better for the organization and for them if they make that realization and give themselves permission to move on. Because it's, trying to get yourself up every day and work in a job that you don't actually experience a sense of meaning or worth in can be very difficult. That can lead to very quick burnout. And it's going to make it hard for you to perform in that job, which is going to create a whole bunch of disappointments with the boss and the team around you. And that's not a good place to keep turning up in, right? So that's not healthy. But look, more often than not, what we do is we discover what actually matters to people, what's important to them, and that ignites the passion. And that ignites the sense of purpose and the sense of connection and the want and the drive to set goals that are a little bit more ambitious and to potentially put more effort in and manage our time and our days a bit better, because it's worth it. We get an intrinsic value out of that as much as we get an extrinsic reward for doing a good job.
So true.
And so we definitely need to have a leadership team, at least an executive team, deeply passionate and connected to the purpose that they're working on, and to really ask themselves and each other that question, why are you really here? What is in this for you? I am here for you. We are peers. We're colleagues. We're going to be connected in a network forever, that lives beyond this organization. So let's actually do the work. Let's do it together.
Absolutely. No, I love the discovery piece of that. And we talked quite extensively about passion, and you mentioned, that passion was one of the three ingredients, purpose and performance being the others in the book that you wrote. So let's talk about the book. What was the motivation behind the book, and tell us a little bit more about the book itself and what it means to you and what it's meant to organizations.
Yeah, great. So really, I wrote this book for organizations who want to become high-performing organizations. So it's very much pitched at that organizational performance level. I wrote it coming off the back of that experience of working with Swiss Wellness and having had, a 15-year career in consulting as well. But I think really what happens is in kind of rapid growth startups, that source of inspiration, the founder, everybody's really close to the founder and everybody pitches in and everybody does all the work together and there's no hierarchy and there's really no order, structure or system initially in a startup environment. And then the startups get to a point where they need to scale up and they add more people and there's more complexity and people get further and further away from the source of the truth, which is the founder. And it starts to happen at that point where they get to this point of, usually around 50 to 100 people. Sometimes it's a bit beyond that point where they realize, oh, wow, we actually need a system to keep ourselves connected as a team to why we're here, what we're working on, and how we need to work together. And so really the book is about helping organizations think about their systems of performance. So how do we keep people in organizations connected and interrelated so that they understand how things work together so that they can perform their own job in relation to how others need to perform their jobs. And when you don't have that day-to-day interaction with a founder who's like constantly like creating the energy and the vibe, you need to systematize that, right? You need to create a process for it. And, James Clear wrote Atomic Habits, and I love his quote around, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Right, so it's all about these processes, the way we work together. So it's a performance system is the system of how do we create interconnectivity in organizations. And the characteristics of a high performance organization is that there's very clear purpose, that there's heaps of people know why they're here, there's passion, people care, and there's performance, people know how what they do drives a result. So there's things that sit behind each of these things, and there's a system for that. So leaders connect people to purpose because they help people understand how what they do is important and matters in the context of the market. Culture drive passion. So culture is about connecting people via this shared system of values and beliefs. And strategy drives performance. So strategy is really all about defining what good looks like and being able to cascade accountability through an organization. And so there's a system for each of those. There's a system for how we lead. There's a system for how we create and regenerate our culture and keep people connected to our values. And there's a system for how we set and align to goals. And if we can kind of embed these habits and these practices in the way that we operate, then we can get this kind of aligned, interconnected way of people working together. So if you're a leader or a founder or a business owner, really you need to be thinking about your systems for connection and each of those, how those three things work together.
I love that. And I love how you're hitting on systems, because we talk a lot about culture being the result of the behaviors and the actions of your people. Like everyone has a culture. Cultures happen whether you like it or not. And so what you're saying is, let's create systems so that we can be intentional about the result or the outcome that we're going to receive, right? The systems do control or help guide the behaviors and actions of the leaders and the people in the organization.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like it's how we work together to get the work done, right? It's all about that. And we do need to be intentional about that. As you say, culture, it's the result of the way people observe leaders leading, and they'll just follow suit. And if often what happens is a founder is really reactive and responsive and visionary, and they come up with lots of ideas and like to test and try out lots of ideas. And then once a business or an organization has a root in a market, really it's about growing and sustaining that idea. So if we want to maintain a sense of entrepreneurialism, but we also want to create a sense of predictability. So if we're constantly trying to be like an entrepreneur always, then we become this sort of reactive, responsive, chaotic mess, really, over time. Because what happened to this sort of Swiss culture after a while, and they were like, oh, we actually just need to kind of give people clarity on what we need them to work on and be a bit predictable about the way that we come back together and make decisions. Right. It's that tipping point where you got to switch over, not so systematized that it's absolutely lost all opportunity for creativity, but enough so that people know how to work together and keep creating.
Sure. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal for an organization is, to create this high performing team, which then is able to provide value to whatever the end customer is for that particular organization. And I'm assuming by putting these systems of performance in place that the result is, good financial benefits to the organization, being able to provide good value to your end customer, those types of things. But if we back that all the way up, and we've already kind of hit on this a little bit, but what are some of the other problems that organizations are facing that these systems of performance are helping to fix, upstream, that are then resulting in that positive end gain at the end, problems inside the organization?
Yeah. So look, I think the problems that are getting solved are things like strategies not actually landing. Like we've got a plan, but we don't see the results we're anticipating based on a plan happening. And often that's because of breakdowns in execution, not because the plan is flawed, because we're not actually driving that or cascading that accountability through an organization. So we see this kind of lackluster performance of a plan. We might set a goal, a revenue target, let's say, of 20% growth in the year, and we achieve 15. And that's, given the conditions at the start of the year, that was a reasonable goal to set. Why didn't we? So that's one of the things that starts to happen. The other problems that start to happen are we see impacts on culture and people. So engagement can be affected. We start to see turnover in an organization. We find it hard to attract and retain people, the really good people that we want in our business, because they're not challenged enough. They're not listened to. They're not enabled. They're not actually given the work that they love in an organization that really appreciates the effort that they put in, because there's too many passengers on board kind of flying, just sort of flying by at 70% productivity, right? So we see that problem of culture happening. And we also see a problem of we get, leaders, we try and build leaders in an organization by giving them teams to work with them to help them. Right. So, but what we're seeing is we promote people who are technical specialists into leadership positions, and they don't know how to lead. They're not actually trained in leadership, which is a skill set in and of its own. So just because you're very, very busy and you need help and you get somebody in your team doesn't automatically make you a good leader or a good manager. So then what we see is a whole bunch of people who are hired, not really maximized, because their boss is too busy to help them or too busy doing the work that they should be delegating. And they don't know how to work with that person and inspire them and get them on board and create a team environment, right? So we see this kind of really underutilization of talent. So there's a couple of problems that can happen in organizations as they grow, and there's just no visibility from the top to the bottom. That all the people, everybody's managing up really well and telling a really great story up, but then the results don't actually turn out the way we expect. And then we see a lot of unhappiness at the front line of people really being underutilized and under-supported.
Right.
So that can happen. And I think these are normal things that happen in organizations with humans in them, because of the, these kind of normal human dynamics that occur. If we don't create an environment where we ask people to keep realigning on goals, set strategies in relation to purpose, tap into people's potential, really live our values and do what we say we're going to be, and not just have it as a set of words on a website, like actually make it happen, then we fall prey to some of these things. You can tick a box, but have you actually embedded these habits in your organization? And if you haven't, then there's an opportunity. There's lots of upside to that, right? There's lots of ways to improve that.
Right. And I hear you speaking to different listeners in our audience, some mid-managers, some executive leaders. Obviously, everything you're putting out there I think is hitting people in different ways. But we have a ton of leaders that are listening, and you're talking specifically to leaders right now. If leaders who are listening right now, if they want to create a high-performing culture, how do they create value in that, or what is their role as a leader in creating that high performing culture?
Yeah. Look, I love this topic in particular. So, most of my work is with leaders and leadership teams to really help them do that. And I work with executives, I work with frontline emerging leaders, I work with middle managers. And I think the challenge is the same, whatever level you're at. Obviously, it's lovely if it all happens from the top down, but sometimes it doesn't perfectly work that way.
Right.
As a leader, you're empowered to create a high performance team or an environment. Even if you don't have a team of people reporting to you, you might be leading a project or an initiative or responsible for a technical specialism, for example. Look, I think if the role that leaders play and what they can actively do is, this idea of just sort of connecting people together. It all starts with purpose. Purpose is central to how to lead. It's central to culture and it's central to strategy. So getting the team of people you're influencing, together either virtually or online or actually physically in a room together to talk about why are we here? Why is this important? How does this create value? Who do we serve? So what's our actual why? Not the what the work we do, it's the why behind it.
Right.
And to sort of get each individual in that group to connect with why that's important to them, right? So it's important for the organization, it's important for the customer group we're serving, but why is it important for you personally? What did you gain out of actually doing this work that's meaningful for you? And then it's like once we're kind of aligned on that and we've sort of got an idea for what that is, we've started to create a bit of a vision together about what actually good looks like. So then we can talk about, let's do our one-page plan, right? What are our goals? What are our actual measures of success? Let's push ourselves a little bit beyond where we're at now. Let's if we're going to be high performance, we need to kind of set high expectations. High performance is not average. It's not average performance team. It's high performance team. So we do need to push ourselves to what we believe is possible and aspirational now, and set some goals as a group, and then agree on, okay, what's our cadence for connection? So how often are we going to come back together to observe our results and look at what worked, what didn't work, and create an environment where it's normal to give and receive feedback, right? So it's okay. We learn from it. Mistakes are great. Like, let's celebrate, the stuff ups and the muck ups, because we've learned from them and we can adapt, using the lean and agile technology and methodology that you talk about and you train people in. Let's actually learn from that. So in those environments, the role that leaders play, and I really support this notion of the Gallup really supports, which is leaders who coach produce better outcomes. So as a leader, it's not about telling people what to do, it's asking people what they think, right? So it's inviting conversation, facilitating and coaching. Take a facilitator coach role, much like what I would do in a room, to invite lots of input and get lots of ideas on the table and allow people to speak and share their viewpoints, and then together create this thing. So the best thing is when you've got an idea in your mind and then someone else says, the idea that you've got in your mind, you're like, great idea, why don't you go and try that? Because then it's their idea, then they care about it, they own it, right? So, let people have that moment a little bit and feel that they're part of a journey and something they care about and they want to be part of it and they want to win together. And that's how you create a team environment. So you can do that whatever level you're at on whatever project you're working on. It's lovely if your boss does that with you too. But if you can try that approach and see how if it's working and what comes out of it, you can then take that to your manager or manage up and say, look, we've tried this. We've generated enormous success with this. I'd really like our team to try this type of approach, where we get in a room every quarter or every 2 months or whatever cadence you want to create, but I would definitely suggest at least quarterly. And, and talk about our why, what are our goals and what are our results? And then what can we learn and adjust for the next quarter? Like that is agile in a nutshell. So be the facilitator and the coach for the conversations. And instantly, I can guarantee instantly you will start to see results. And if you see people walk out of that room disengaged, that's a one-on-one about what are they there for? What's their purpose? What's their meaning? Are they getting value? Are they doing what they love? Because you might need to help that person move out of the role, either in the organization elsewhere or another organization. And that's better for them, better for you. If you see yourself as a career builder, somebody who actually supports and enables other people's growth, you'll get the best out of them when they're with you. And beyond that, they will absolutely thrive and flourish. And what a compliment, what a compliment to you as a leader to see the people that you managed go on and build incredible careers around you. Like that is the ultimate feedback and give back as a leader. So yeah, there's lots of really simple things leaders can do, but they think they're too busy to do it. And that is a self-perpetuating lie, right? You are creating your own busyness by doing this stuff all the time and not empowering the people around you. You're creating that environment. That's really hard to take sometimes. It's hard feedback to take. But if you can be open to that idea, then you can certainly transform the way people around you operate.
So true. One of the things that we encourage leaders, just a very simple question. This is one of my most favorite questions that you can ask your team member is, what do you think we should do? Right? Instead of me telling you, to your point, just a simple question. What do you think we should do? Even if you as a leader have a thought about what should be done, or have done it before and have done it a certain way, throw that out the window and just ask your team member, what do you think we should do? And if they say something that you don't totally agree with, but it's not going to cause, maybe safety or quality issues or anything like that, let them try it, let them experiment. Maybe you'll learn something through the process, right? So I think that's just great advice for our listeners. I think about also, if we think about those people that have just been promoted into a leadership position, like I specifically am thinking of a frontline team leader who's just, very new to management and leadership. Any practical advice that you would give, just a couple things that you would say, start with this, or, apply these couple tips, and anything at all?
Yeah, great. Yeah, love that question. What do you think? I mean, it's a magic question.
It is.
It's a magic question. And the follow-up to that is, what else? What else?
Right.
What else? What else? What else? Right? Those are the magic question. Look, I think just on really practical, if you're brand new, you're stepping in for the first time, or you're a CEO who's just been hired and you're coming on in, I think really start with connecting, just connecting. So start on that culture piece, like, why are we here? What's important to you? How are we working together? And how can we work together better? So this is calling out the values and behaviors. So if people want more trust, if they actually want more trust and more respect, which is what everybody wants, if people want more trust, then ask them, what does trust look like to you? How can we show and demonstrate that we trust each other? So what do you need from me? If respect is important, or what does respect really look like when we're working together? And they'll tell you, they'll let you know, right? So you're creating a conversation about how do we create the right culture, the right environment that we all want to work in. And we're going to set that before we start talking about the what. What are we going to work on? Because if you show that you care about the experience people are having before you start talking about the work and the deliverables and the outputs, then you show that you actually care. They will automatically feel connected and heard and listened to, and they will want to give you their discretionary effort. It's you don't even have to ask for it. It's going to be there. So go in and start with what's working for you. How are we working together? How can we work together better? What do you need from a leader? What do you need from me? And listen, like really be willing to listen and take it on board and show that you're trying. Like, you're not expected to be a perfect human, but you are expected to kind of role model these values that we have on our wall behind us, on the website. Mm-hmm. People are looking at you for the example of that. So if you are showing that you are learning and living up to as much as you can, these expectations that you have of yourself and each other, being really vulnerable and humble, admitting to mistakes, admitting to when you get it wrong, and being grateful for the feedback people give you, then you will just very, very quickly generate very deep and meaningful and vulnerable kind of connections with people, which allow you to get to the root of the issues much faster, and get on with the work that people really want to do, that they think is going to make a difference. Respecting that they're the ones doing the work, they understand the problems, they're talking to the customers, they know where the system's falling down, They know where the process is broken. Like, they can tell you those things, but they won't if they don't think you're going to listen and they don't think you're going to respect what they have to say. They just won't. They'll just carry on doing the bare minimum.
Right.
So you need to create that environment where it's safe to raise all of this stuff. And you do that by talking about how we work together better, and then kind of really trying your best to role model and live up to those things.
So true. Such good advice. I appreciate that very much. Stephanie, if someone is interested to get a copy of your book, where would be the best place for them to go to find a copy of that?
Look, it's online, all the best resellers, Amazon, Booktopia. You can also just check my website. So that's stephaniebown.com. So that's Bown, not Brown. Bown, brown without the I. I get that a lot. So just check out my website and you'll be able to find the links to the book and various resources that are available if you're interested.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And we'll put those links right into the show notes. So if anyone's interested to grab Stephanie's book, you can go right to the show notes for a link directly to her book. And then Stephanie, if someone wants to reach out to you with questions or maybe your information about your consulting company and different things like that, LinkedIn, or is it go to your website? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, both are great. So LinkedIn is just Stephanie Bown, and you can also just reach out to me directly. It's stephanie@stephaniebown.com for an email. You can send a pigeon if you like. I'm pretty old school, so you can call me on my phone. Actually, my phone number is available on my website, so I love phone calls now.
That's great.
Yeah.
When you said that, I was thinking, is pigeon like a new social media? It's like, maybe I'm not.
It's an actual word with a note. Maybe we've just invented something new, Patrick. I think we need to get onto that idea.
I like it. Well, Stephanie, it's been great. I consider myself a lifelong learner and just love talking to people like you. The value that you're providing to our listeners and to me personally has been great today. So thank you so much for your time and just your commitment to organizations, helping to develop people and helping them to align their passions with their purposes and just the amazing work that you're doing. Just thank you so much. And thank you for being on the show.
Look, thank you so much for having me, Patrick. And likewise, it's great to connect with people around the world who are passionate about this work of continuous improvement and growth and supporting organizations to have the difficult conversations. So it's been wonderful talking to you, and thank you for your questions today and for having me on your show. And thank you to the listeners.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please give us a review. Thank you so much.